is a coach something that he needs right now to help him with his everyday life apart from his counseling
Yeah.
and so forth? Because he could very well benefit from having a coach, but he needs to be aware of what the limits of that relationship are. And I think that your two of them cooperating together would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
So let's just tell us a little bit more about what you have done with him and what your plan is going forward from here with him.
Well, as far as the personality side of it, I don't think there's anything there that I'm going to address because of his self-awareness, and he's working with a psychologist. The part that I will play with him for a while as he wants is getting involved in church, trying to figure out where his place in the kingdom is. And that's something I think I can speak into, as a pastor. And even at some point, I probably will end up speaking with his pastor, maybe the three of us together. But, part of it is just social anxiety, which keeps him isolated. And, his cycles run, I don't know, they're not quite quarterly, but they're more than a 2-month cycle. So he's got a pretty significant block of time where he's what he calls himself normal. And if he's watching very carefully, the rises and falls in his personality are fairly minimal. But there's things that he needs to do to protect himself. And as I said, he's currently not medicated, though he does have the medicines with him. And that involves a phone call and a chat on the phone before he starts taking them.
Okay. Another thing, talking about what the other Les mentioned, not just you and the counselor getting together, but just suggesting to him that he might, has he shared his report with his psychologist or psychiatrist, whichever one he's seen?
I don't think he has yet. I mean, this was just over the weekend that he took it. And, we've had 2 Zoom sessions since the weekend.
So you might suggest to him that he share that with his counselor and say, based on this, help me work through some things that I ought to do to try and keep myself healthy.
Yeah, and I don't know if, the counselor may not be real familiar with the Birkman, but they can read the report and certainly just to be aware that he's working on that, working through it may be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. Anything else, Les, that you would like to, that you feel you need?
I think that's good. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. Hey, Jake, you talked about the main challenge that brought you last month was wanting to know about languages for the leadership grip. Is it in French? And yeah, talk to us. Yeah, and you found out that it is coming.
Yeah, so I mean, I work with a district of the Christian Missionary Alliance here in and around, well, actually we go from Toronto all the way to St. John's, Newfoundland, 85 churches, basically a third English, a third Cantonese or Mandarin, and then a third everything else.
Wow.
Amharic, Spanish, Arabic, Vietnamese, Filipino, Tagalog speaking. So having the Birkman is available in many languages, as we know. Having the leadership grip available in French in particular, and then into other languages will be great. And actually, I was just in a series of meetings on Monday where they talked about they're just rolling out the French version, I guess, and Ken has messaged me privately here with a few of the details about that, which is great. So, I mean, our challenge now then is to train folks who speak those languages to actually become Grip-Birkman coaches, which is sort of the next phase. So, but thank you.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, the Chinese is in process. We've got it with a proofreader right now, and we're going to actually have the 2 versions. We're going to have the traditional characters and I forget what they call the more modern characters that are more used on the mainland.
Great.
We'll have both of those probably within a couple of months at the latest.
Wow.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, so hopefully when just a little sneak preview for you folks. The new Grip-Birkman website is coming very soon. Right, Ken? It is coming very soon. And when it launches, we hope to have French, Chinese, and what's the third one? Those two will be ready, we hope, for sure.
Yeah, the Spanish is
And
still
Spanish
in the
is
beginning stages.
in just the beginning stages. Hopefully it will be pretty soon close behind those. So, and by the way, if any of you know people who want or need it in other languages, then let us know. And our process is pretty simple for letting that out to people who are capable to do the translations. And we do have a process for making sure we get it back translated to make sure that we're using the terms properly and that sort of thing. So there is a process that we can go through to make sure that we get good translations for it, and those will be available. And with that new website that we're putting up, it'll be easy for people to order it in their language. And in our case, with the leadership grip, that will be both the questions of the questionnaire and the leadership grip report will come to them in their language. For the Birkman, we're still in the process of getting a lot of the reports translated. The questionnaire has not changed, so it's available in, I think, about 26 languages now. And I hope you all do know that when a person logs on to begin their questionnaire, when they come to the Birkman questionnaire, they have an option with a drop-down menu to select their language for the purpose of the questions. And even though the reports through Grip-Birkman right now will still come to them in English, hopefully over the course of just the next year or two, we'll start seeing more and more of the reports in the Birkman coming to them in their languages as well. So it is in process, it is happening, and will happen.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jake, and others who have been pushing for that, and we have heard you, and we're trying our best to respond.
Thanks.
So, who else has another challenge that you'd like to share with us? And by the way, we don't have to play that old game of I can top that. It doesn't have to be one that you think tops any of these that we've mentioned already.
I would be interested in discussing any situations that you guys have run into where confidentiality is an important issue. Could be a staff team where there's concerns about how much of their, let's say, Grip-Birkman language gets shared with the rest of the staff team. And in some HR circles, for example, I was working with the HR director at our office, and she was not in favor of using the Birkman, for example, as a team building tool or an assessment tool because of the confidentiality and just the information that you get on another person. And so I'm just wondering if you've run into any concerns like that and how you address them.
Ken, you all are facing sometimes confidentiality with some of the people that you're working with, like pastors, potential pastors, elders, elder boards. Talk to us a little bit about how you address that.
Well, you know what? It's a tiptoe through the tulips issue in many ways. But I think one of the issues is that I don't think in many cases it's appropriate to share people's reports with other people, even in a staff situation. But like direct reports, so if you're doing a signature report, there's a 36-page report. To hand that around to everybody is almost always, in my mind, inappropriate. But I think some of the team and group reports, you can choose what you deal with in those issues. And so what happens is that you're able to well, you're able to actually share what the person wants to. I've had people just simply say, I am so unhappy with this result, even though I know it's true. I need to deal with it before the staff knows. This is especially true in a senior pastor or in somebody who oversees other people. And so you just simply say, okay, when we do the team reports, the team builds, let's stay away from that particular issue right now. And I just think it's a careful walk through the process, and it involves dialogue. I guess I say all the time, so, A, was this true? B, did God make you? And then C, what are you going to do about it? And how does that hinder your ability to serve the kingdom? And maybe, just maybe, if your team knows about this, it's actually an opportunity for them to grow with you. But yeah, I don't think I've had two situations that turned out exactly the same. That's for sure. So it's a great question, Neil. I wish I had a really good answer for you.
Well, two things I heard. One, it might not be appropriate for the let's say the direct lead to let's say go over the report with someone who's reporting to them. So in other words, a senior pastor might not be the one who would be appropriate for going over a report with one of their staff members. So that might not be appropriate. And then the second one is there may be circumstances where people would want to share their own information, but not a whole report. So if you put a map on the floor, people would be willing to stand where their symbols are and talk about what that means for them in light of what they know about themselves from the report, but they're not sharing the report with everybody in the group.
Yeah. When we work with teams, we usually try to meet with whoever the team leader is of that team ahead of time, so that we're able to go over their report and there are no surprises during the team build. And we always ask the team leader, we say, we're sure that one of your desires is to have a healthy team. And one of the ways to have a healthy team is for you to be vulnerable in sharing with the rest of your team about your report. It's up to you what you share, but the more you share with them, the more free they're going to feel to share with you. And if you don't share with them, if you're not open on the front end of this, then they're going to be hesitant to share, and the team build is not going to be very effective in the purpose for which you've asked us to be here. So most leaders, when they hear that, they're willing to step up and start the sharing in the process and begin to share openly, little by little, and then the team opens up as they open up.
So in that respect, having an outside facilitator, having an outside person, it really helps the team to, let's say, take an extra step up their challenge, to be more vulnerable maybe than they're used to being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Neil, I'm curious, in some of the case you're thinking about, would there be someone who might be in a supervisory kind of a role who is actually acting as the coach for his own people, for his own team?
Well, occasionally that happens with me, where I'm both in a supervisory function as a church planting director, okay, and also a coach. And I try to avoid that as much as possible, but occasionally that happens.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that I would want to share with people, of course, ideally, I would think that a supervisor would not be the first person to be coaching someone in a dialogue with their assessments in the beginning. It would be ideal for an outside person to be that coach.
Mm-hmm.
And when I am doing that, I'm always very clear with the individual to say, why wouldn't you want your supervisor to know this? So your supervisor could help you to be in your most effective, productive self. If you have needs from your supervisor, don't you want them to be able to practice some situational leadership with you and give you the kind of leadership that you need to be your very best? Why wouldn't you want them to know that about you? But you're going to coach them in such a way that they need to be the ones sharing this with their supervisor and sharing what they want to. If the supervisor has been through a Grip-Birkman process themselves, they know what the Birkman is saying. They've got the opportunity to be self-revealing to their team members that then promotes the team members also to be vulnerable and self-revealing as they are. And I was working with one organization that there were a number of people, particularly in their home office, who were really afraid of doing any kind of assessments because they always thought this was going to be used as a tool to get rid of them, a tool to say, oh, you're not being effective, you're not the right person for this job, and here's a way for us to boot you out. When we had to spend a good bit of time working with them to say, not everyone has access to this information, only trained personnel have access to it, and they have access to it for the purpose of facilitating, coaching you, and you are in charge of your information in terms of what you share. However, if the organization has paid for the assessment, our attitude is it's the organization's information that they're gathering here for your benefit. And we really had to work hard at building that trust and being trustworthy with the information that we had. So very careful, never, we trained our consultants, our coaches, never to share information with anyone except the individual. We send the individual their reports. Grip-Birkman does this. We will only send the reports to the coach who's ordering the report and the individual. We won't send it to anyone else. And we give them that assurance. So you're in charge of this. Now let's coach you through it. How do you use this information for your benefit? And how do you share this with your supervisor? Now, another thing I like to do, we have this tool, and we've actually included it in the current coach training manual, a tool that we call My Personal User Manual. And that's where the individual can glean from their reports some conclusions, some concluding summary statements. Here are my strengths as I see them. Here are some of the biggest mistakes you can make with me. Here are some of the things that I need for me to be my very best. And it's really just like their Grip-Birkman summary sheet in a verbal context, where they can, in one concise sheet, put together something very similar to what we used to get, which was the coaching page. We used to get a coaching page report, but I like this better even than the coaching page because the individual is deciding which statements they want to put in their report. And now here's something they can give to their supervisor or even to coworkers to say, let me share with you what I've learned about myself that I think would be helpful for you to know so you can help me be my very best on this team. And as I'm coaching them through, how do you want to share the information that you want them to know about you so they can help you be the very best? And that way they're keeping their signature report, their basics report, or their leadership grit report, all of that is theirs. They can hold that as tight as they want to. How much of that do they want to reveal to those people right now?
I think that there's another question at stake here, and that's the question of the health of the team.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, my experience is the healthier the team, the more open people are about both the good and bad from their own report.
Yeah.
When I have had a situation several times where, especially a senior leader or somebody overseeing staff is just very, very unhappy about sharing any information from their working profile. Almost all in those situations, this is a heads up for me to begin asking some other questions, and there's something else going on, that there's some dysfunction in the team that has nothing to do with Grip-Birkman.
Oh, yeah.
and has everything to do with some other issues. And so the minute that I'm running into that resistance, I'm saying, let's step back away from Grip-Birkman for a while. And I've got some other other work to do outside of that, and because it's a team issue, and so then you get into Lanchoni's dysfunctions of a team and all those kind of things. You get into a lot of other stuff that has nothing to do with Grip-Birkman, and once you see some health and trust being built in the team, then it's easy to come back, and then the team thrives because of that.
This conversation has been so helpful for me. I mean, I'm so new at this. And I had talked about this a few cafes ago. I had done a team build for a church that's got 23 staff members. And when I was hired, contacted and hired, I was just, what I was supposed to do was just, arrange for the assessments and do a team build. And when I told the lead pastor that I wanted to do a one-on-one with him before we got to the team build, and at that point, he decided he wanted to have all of the records in his hands. And at that point, I'm like, that's not what we talked about. And the arrangement is that each person gets their report, and I'll have access to the reports so that I can do the team build effectively. And he kept being insistent. He actually dragged out their HR manual and showed me in the document where it says all of the testing and reports for their hiring will be kept on file. And I just kind of shrugged my shoulder and I said, this wasn't for their hiring, this is for improving your team. And so what we ended up doing with, at the team build, he had to participate in all the activities, and then he had to ask the team for them to provide a file or a copy to put in their permanent file. But I said, I'm not going to have part with that. So that's how I dealt with it at that point. But I just wasn't going to go there. But if they willingly turned it over, and they all did. But it was just interesting how he wanted to play that game once he realized how valuable the tool was.
Les, I'm curious, did he share his profile with the rest of the team?
His profile?
Yeah. Did he share his report with them, the same as he was asking them to share with him?
No, they've not seen his whole report, but in the conversation on the floor with the map, he was out there on the floor with them. We talked, he participated in all the activities we did with that. When we were talking about the components, he participated in the activities with that. But I doubt they'll ever see his report, but they were able to see him doing the activities the same as they were doing.
At least he was self-revealing, and he was vulnerable with them about his own profile.
Yes, yeah. But I don't think he was going to do that until I told him he needed to. I think he was just going to walk around and take notes. And
yeah, that would have, I agree, Wayne. That would have been
yeah, well.
So here's a bit of an outlier position, because I certainly hear what's being said. And like if we even go back to say something as basic as kind of the fundamental principles in the ICF around confidentiality and stuff like that, all of those certainly apply in every situation. But like in our world, we've probably done on our staff, we're 2/3 of the way through. We've probably got at least 40 people through their Grip-Birkman. And at this point, virtually all of those conversations have happened between a supervisor and a staff member, because our supervisors are trained as coaches and they're actually having those conversations with their staff. And then every one of those teams, once all those conversations have taken place, are doing their team build. And then we put a degree of separation in, because we want the supervisor of that team to be able to participate in the team build. So typically it would be somebody like myself that would come in and do the team build. So, and now at a point where we have teams where the leader of that team, they don't actually, for whatever reason, want to become a Grip-Birkman coach and lead their teams through those conversations. So we'll have one of our other coaches do that. We've never run, I would say, of the 40-some that we've done, the issue of confidentiality has never come up. Nor have we ever had a problem in the relationship between the supervisor as coach and the team member as coachee. In fact, we've had unbelievable insight and synergy developed through the conversation and the dialogue that comes out of that, and that giving them the opportunity to then be in a position as partners to work through things both with at the individual level and also at the level. And we never, like we would say from a confidentiality view, that report is, yes, that's up to you in terms of what you're going to do with other people. We're not distributing those, we're not giving those out. But in the team builds we've done, we've never had a single situation where an individual wasn't prepared to fully engage in the different exercises that we're doing at both the Grip or at the Birkman level. So I'm not disagreeing at all with what anybody's saying. I'm just saying that it's possible to do it a different way and to have really good outcomes that come from that. And I'm going to be in a situation now. Right now, I'm moving to the situation where I'll have the other more technical approach, where I'll actually have people doing the coaching of individuals that where they're not engaged with that team. And then we'll have to think through that process of how a team member communicates that with their supervisor and all the rest of that. But it's been quite efficient for us in the sense that we've had to deal with that thus far. And yet we've had zero trouble with that.
That's
So
great.
just an outlier position that I think adds a bit more flavor to the conversation.
There's no doubt, Les, that you've got a very healthy organization, and in your ethos, you have built that openness that is already there with the teams that you're working with, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably. I can, like I said, I'm not disagreeing with anything that's been said, and I can appreciate how Ken made the comment about the 5 descriptions of team. We've all seen teams where they can't get off the first level, and there's no trust, and what I'm suggesting would be unthinkable. Right? Like we all get that, right? I'm just not in a world where that is the case. We have been able to develop a fairly healthy culture, and I think probably the only thing I'm trying to say is that having that extra degree of intentionality and depth in the conversation have some real benefits if you can pull it off.
Yeah, and if you can use that to help build that kind of health.
Yeah.
Les, I'm just curious because you're working with a couple of other guys on a project right now for Grip-Birkman talking about organizational saturation and working with that. Is that sort of thing coming up at all in your conversations?
No, we haven't had anything come up with respect to the confidentiality issue. We're still, I think, probably still looking at and thinking through bigger rocks than that.
Yeah.
And you know, once we kind of figure out how to get bigger boulders in the right place, and the other ones will start to show up. Is my mission, right? We'll go, oh yeah, there's that. But so one of the things we're working on, well, actually, I can hold off on that until we feel like we're done this conversation. But anyway, just some observations from a different kind of way of, and plus, of course, the other assumption that's different, Neil, than yours is that in many situations, you may be dealing with outside entities, whereas I'm in an internal world, this particular application. I've done lots of Grip-Birkman with outside groups, and it's a little different then because then you have to gauge where they're at and what would be the appropriate way to handle that. But
yeah, and I think if you go in treating this as normal, that it's normal for teams to talk together and to be open together about these things.
Totally.
Set up an expectation that, hey, this is the way people do things. This is the way other churches and other organizations do things, and they'll want to be on that normal plane. But if you go in a little hesitant and say, you know, we really need to be careful about confidentiality, then it raises a flag of, oh, maybe I need to watch out for this because what could possibly happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, right? Because you're, as the person who's coming in, if it's in an external application, there's a certain amount of projection, whether you like it or not, that will have an impact on how other people are going to perceive what's about to happen.
Right.
But I do think you have to be upfront and clear about kind of what is the health of the team. And, you know, none of us want to go in and work with a team and blow it up, right? That's not the idea. We want to be helpful. So I totally appreciate what's being said around this stuff. And you and I, Larry, and we've talked about this before in terms of kind of, is there a role for this type of approach? What's normal? And I get that what we're doing isn't typical in terms of application.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet you may come to a point, Les, in your case, where you've got enough coaches in the church where initially with the first team build, when a new group might be doing their very first Grip-Birkman assessments, you'll want yourself or someone else, as you already mentioned, to do that first team build with them and not have the supervisor trying to lead his own team through their first team build. And then he can carry the dialogue on after that, having all that information in his hands.
We never have the supervisor do the team build. We always have the team build being done by somebody who's a degree of separation removed, because we want the supervisor involved in the team build and seen as a participant in that.
Exactly.
And actually, like I just did one last week and it was fantastic. And the dialogue that was going back and forth was us. It was an us versus me and you kind of approach. And it worked so well.
Wayne, you had something else I think that you wanted to kick in and walked on.
Yeah, so just kind of a question. So the last team build I did was for administrative staff for a large Christian school. And what I'm hearing is I shouldn't have sent all the reports to the HR director afterwards, and the direct supervisors shouldn't have had access. Because one of the things I do is I do furnish the coaching page, and so I shouldn't have furnished those to the direct supervisors for the different teams that were in the room.
Well, I don't think I would say you shouldn't have. I would say I have done that before with teams that we were working with. And what I would say to the team is, by the way, I want you to know that your supervisor is going to have this coaching page. We use that. They're not going to get the whole report. Sometimes I would say to them, hey, you really ought to share this with your supervisor so they can help you and continue this process. They can continue this dialogue with you and use this as they are doing their one-on-one supervision with you. And I would even ask in the room, you can send that to them themselves, but if any of you would like for me to send that for you, I'll just do it. Raise your hands, and everybody raises their hand. Great, I'll just go ahead and ship this over to the leader for you. That's all they're receiving. They've seen that page themselves to know what it is I'm passing over to the supervisor. What I've also done, though, is in some cases to say, your supervisor's here in the room with you. We've been doing this team build, and it would really be helpful for your supervisor to send this coaching page to you. And I've coached the supervisor ahead of time to say, you really ought to share your coaching page with them so they'll know where you're coming from. It's sharing with them what your needs and your expectations are. So he shares it with them, and I say, your team leader is going to be sending this to you. It would be great if you would send yours to your team leader. And since he's in the room, he's kind of going to be expecting that from everybody. Everybody's going to be doing it. So that makes it a little easier on them to say, yeah, this is just expected. It's what we're doing. And it's for the purpose of helping us. It's not for the purpose of getting rid of anybody. So I don't think I would say, Wayne, that you shouldn't have done it. But I do think you ought to do it with full awareness of the people who can have it.
Yeah.
Neil, has this been helpful for the problem that you presented, the challenge you presented?
I've taken notes, so it must have been helpful. I'm curious, with Wayne's situation, how did the school staff respond to the idea that their director has that information on file?
I'm trying to remember how we did that. I don't know that we made it public. And again, the HR, the CEO of the school wanted the reports all sent to the HR director. The school paid for the reports. So, you know, part of the question is on this is who owns those reports? I mean, the school paid for them. The team build was done during work time. You know, so I think technically the school owns the information.
I think so.
And if someone didn't want to give the information up, they probably would need to protest that through the chain of command in the school, and not take it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think I would want them to volunteer how much of the information they provide, and this gets me thinking about the the little chart that I sent out. You know, I think I talked about it last time. I had the leadership grip poster with the triangle up above.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's divulging your information in a summary format, and I'm asking people to do that, and I'm even suggesting in the last one that I did, I'm suggesting that the pastor take pictures of everybody's poster so they have a record of what the information is.
Yeah, and not the new one that you've done, but I used the old, you know, with when we had the
large one.
The large, yeah, and you know, everybody does them on the wall, and everybody walks around and looks at them, and everybody's given the information. It's just kind of this assumption that we're doing this as a way for us to function better.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and that's the hope. But I recently did a full components piece with with an executive director of an organization, and I got down to the component piece, and he, as an executive director, had a very low assertiveness score, and it turns out that we work together on a couple of different teams, and where we're team members, and I'm the only one in the group that knows that he has a very low assertiveness score, and on the teams he comes across as being very assertive, self-assured, and the interesting thing is, because I know that about him, I know that he's not, when he brings information to the group, he's not there to push his agenda. He's there to spark creativity. He's not pushing an agenda. And for me, it's really valuable information. I wish that he would share that with the group, but his public persona is as a very self-assured, assertive person.
Yeah.
So, but I happen to know that information because I did the full component thing with it.
Yeah. Well, and one of the cool things with this, like I'm coaching, I've done a couple of calls with one of the departments, and they've actually shared their Birkmans with each other. And the coaching right now is helping them realign their job descriptions based upon what they've been learning through the Birkman.
In an ideal world, I think that's what happens.
Yeah.
But sometimes teams get competitive with one another, and especially if they've had some initiatives or assignments go sideways, then people get protective.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is the health of like Les was saying, the health of the team, the health of the supervisor, and how have they used information in the past and things. So, yeah, all right.
So maybe just one last thought on that, because I think this actually gets into it. If the organization is intentionally trying to develop a more coach-like environment, then the Grip-Birkman is not an anomaly. It's actually just another way that they're having coaching conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so probably the thing that needs to be said is that we've also trained all our supervisors in coaching. And so most of the time when we're having conversations, it's more coach-like than maybe the case in other organizations. And when that takes place, the Grip-Birkman conversation actually fits in and doesn't seem to be something that's more of a, what is that, right? Because that's the way they're all the time anyway. So I think that's another thing that we can be doing with organizations, is helping them understand that developing a bit more coach-like environment help not only with this, but their whole team type dynamic.
Good.
Yeah, just one more tool in your toolkit for helping to build that kind of unity in the team. And we do need to remember that the Grip-Birkman is a tool in your toolkit. I hope it's not the only tool that any of us have. And as we find other tools that work together well with it, for the purpose of building that healthy unity in the body, which, by the way, guys, I can't believe it, but we've already spent a whole hour talking about this. It always amazes me when I look up at the clock and I say, wow, the time is over. I can't believe it. I don't know about you, but I love these conversations because I always get something fresh from you guys that helps me, that's current, that's going to help us to be better coaches at what we're doing. And all I can say is let's get together again next month and carry on with some more of the same. Neil, I appreciate what you say there, that you like that organizations have a choice about the kind of organization they envision. It's all about the leaders in that organization setting the pace for people. And if you've got an unhealthy leader, it's going to be hard for him to develop healthy teams, isn't it? It comes down from that. So thanks a lot. Wayne, that book, Pat McMillan's book, Performance Factor, anything else you want to say about that to us before we sign off?
It's just a great resource to use with building high performance teams, and actually gives you a model for how to build a team. And I've used it extensively. North American Mission Board, Larry, used it years ago, and been trained with it. And we actually used it in CRM in training team leaders. There you go. There's Neil's copy of it. Yeah. So it's a great tool to use, as well as the other book that was the 5 dysfunctions and things. Great resources. Great.
Well, fellas, thanks so much to all of you for joining us. We'll be together again next month. Thanks for us as we're in the next 2 days of finishing up the signature training with the people here. We've got a good group, 17 new coaches, Grip-Birkman professionals that will be finishing up their training on Friday. And I actually have 18 in the room because Ron Ward is with us, who's sitting in as an alumnus, going through the training with us also. So we're having a really fun time here with the group. Appreciate your prayers for us as we wind this up and have a bunch of other people. Many of them are going to become trainers of coaches, and we'll see our tribe increasing over a pretty wide part of the world. We have people coming from as far away as Spain, the Czech Republic, some coming from Africa that are here this week, some from Central Asia, some from Europe. So we've got a pretty wide, diverse group that's here, and definitely will appreciate your prayers for us as we continue this training. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you again next month, I hope. And if we didn't get to your challenge, and it's an urgent one, feel free to write us, and we'll try to get some roundtable discussion about that. Otherwise, we'll get together again next month. Meanwhile, I hope that you'll all just keep doing what you can to build unity in those teams that you're working with that will ultimately result in unity in the body of Christ. So we'll see more people coming to know Jesus as a result of it. The Lord bless you, and we'll see you next month. Bye-bye.